got to bring me in. Good morning, Tracy. It's
Ah,
Thursday. It's pouring freaking rain for like 5 days
really?
in Minnesota. It's yeah, we're in flood stage on every river. Last year, they were saying the Mississippi River was going to dry out and there was going to be
Hmm.
no more boat tours on the Mississippi, and now it's getting ready to flow over the banks. So,
Oh my
and
goodness.
California is getting water. So be careful what you ask for. You
Yeah.
just might get it.
Florida's getting a lot of flooding. There they had foot deep water on the streets. Here recently, I got to see a lot of videos. It's interesting. Like here, we're looking beautiful, Paul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the funny thing. You also see the news and the heat wave that's coming through. We
Hmm.
were at a nice cold 45 degrees last night. Right now it's about
Woo!
50. We were freezing yesterday. We had one day that we hit 89 and then
Mhm.
it just went through, but we've been battered by thunderstorms. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm excited to be here today. This is going to be a great day for me, and I love getting started with our Pivot Point live on Thursday mornings around 8 time in the morning.
Not time. Yeah.
Yeah, 8 something or
Uh,
other.
yeah. Well, that's what having clients is about. They keep you over on the phone, right?
That's exactly right. So I
So,
I I I come across a quote, Paul, that I think is
uh-oh.
is kind of a good way to open up our subject for today to serve our listeners. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn.
Okay, who's the quote from?
I do not know.
Uh-oh.
It's anonymous
Uh-oh.
to me. Maybe I
It's
need to
anonymous
research
to
who
you.
said that. But
Yeah.
I love the quote because it kind of goes along with what we're talking about today on effective training. That
Hmm.
that's a component. And I just got off the call just before this one on the training, and I asked, "Do you have a documented, proven process for training?" And most people do not. They're at the tell me, and then people forget. I
Or
can't get
my
over.
favorite is shadow me and just watch me do it, and then do it exactly how I do it.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
So I think the big thing, and I think that's a great discussion that we have today, is that we cover, like what is the basis of a great training program? How do you get in there and document your process to the level that you can train someone on it? We should probably talk about that a little bit. We should also talk about, um, how to how to keep that going, because you train once,
Yeah.
and the average human being, keeps about 3% of any particular training, especially if it's long. So we should probably cover how to, reinforce that training afterwards, because in any business or anything, training is a lifetime event. You never
Mm.
stop educating, you never stop training, and you also should never stop looking at your process to see if you can improve it. And then you have to train on the improvements that you put in place. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I love it, and I think one thing that's popping for me is one of the biggest benefits of a repeatable, documented, reinforced. I loved how you put that key in there. Training process is that of efficiency. I mean, like,
Yes.
I've asked people, if I join today, how long until I'm independent? How long until I like? Well, that depends. What does it depend upon? Well, it depends upon the person. But if you have that, I mean, like if you have a documented, proven process, then you can say, hey, it's, I mean, that, I mean, if it takes longer than, 2 weeks, 10 shifts to train me, then maybe it was a hiring mistake. There's a get it, want it, there's a capacity thing that they didn't have joining the team. They didn't have the capacity to receive this information. So there's something there and we can explore that a little bit deeper once we get there. But that's what's popping for me. So let's talk about
Well,
this
so
process.
yeah, so I guess I'll start this out with a small story. Ha
Bring it.
ha.
Love it.
So as you know, I was in the United States Navy and there was a term of service that you had to do when you were in the Navy. It's called mess duty, and
Uh-huh.
everybody had to do mess duty when they got on the ship. And of course, I grew up um, before I even went in the Navy. I had 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. Holy cow, that's kind of crazy. That I had 5 years in the short or as a short order cook in the restaurant industry. So
Hmm.
and because I had that background, I kind of got spoiled. Most people go to mess duty and they get stuck, serving all the enlisted. Well, I I got the chief's mess, which was probably the easiest job in the Navy because I
Hmm.
only had to work for lunch and for dinner, and I cooked for 14 chiefs on my ship directly. And by the way, the quality of food that I got for the Chiefs
Yes.
mess versus the regular mess
Uh-huh.
was absolutely amazing. So I was cooking lobster and crab up there while they were, serving shit on a shingle.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, the point being is the first day I was there, we had training. Even though I was an accomplished cook, we had training, and
Hmm.
there was a menu that I was trained on in the Chiefs mess. Now that's great, and I'm sure hopefully every restaurant does that. But how many times have you brought a new cook into a restaurant and trained them in a day?
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the
Rare.
second stage was the killer stage because at every station in my kitchen there was a manual that was taped to the wall. This is a very Navy thing to do, right? So every recipe that I was allowed to cook in the Chief's mess had the recipe stapled to the hood overhang. There was a manual on the fridge for PMS or preventative maintenance system so that you clean the fridge properly
Uh-huh.
once a week. There was a manual on the grease fryer of exactly how to clean the grease fryer, what temperature it should be set at for what food that's on the particular menu that you're cooking. So at any time, if I had a question about what I'm doing, I didn't have to run down the, you know, the lieutenant that ran all of the food on the
Mhm.
ship. I could just turn the manual to the page that I had the question on, and by God, there
Yeah.
was the answer. So,
Hmm.
I when we talk about training, uh, manuals, reinforcement of training, I always go back to my military experience because I have never worked for an organization that has been better at making sure the information that you need to do your job was right there at hand.
Yeah, right. And Paul, when I was thinking about that from my time in, I was in a steak restaurant in Cincinnati, Ohio, just outside of that, on the other side of Cincinnati in Kentucky. There were three stores, and I was in charge of 19 years old, being the night shift supervisor, and we only had the PM shift. Everybody on the team, except for the dishwashers, everybody in the kitchen had to learn how to make mashed potatoes. Everybody, because that's what this company was known for. They were known for their steaks, the quality of the meat, and but they were known for their mashed potatoes. So everybody had to be trained, and that was one of the when you said being trained in a day. No, you're right. They were not never trained in a day on everything that they were, whether the line cook or fry cook on the steaks or grill side, but everybody got trained the proper way to make mashed potatoes because there was a consistency that had to be done. There was a smoothness that had to be done. There was the right amount of salt, pepper, the amount of American cheese that they put in. That was like one of their secrets. And real butter. How many sticks of real butter is there? Everybody had to get trained in that to where the mashed potatoes came out the same way every time, no matter when you came in.
Yeah,
And that was the
yeah,
one thing that I remember that we had a process for, and it was documented, but that was the only one. And this is 1997.
yeah, yeah.
And
So I
now
mean, that's yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
and now, like with the rise of, technology has been so advanced since then. You can walk around with an iPad. Like you can just have a little tabs open where bang, you can everything can be documented and have that proper, like the manual, instead of sitting on a fryer or something like that. Nowadays, I mean, now in the military, it may be the same way. But what happened was, what I found is when people started leaving the recipe and not following the documentation and showing the new hires where that was, then it just became like, well, this is how I do it.
Ah, the old "this is how I do it."
And then what happened? I mean, we know how this ends. This is how I do it. Well, so and so said, and like, hey, you're doing that wrong. That's not what the documentation says. That's not what the manual says. Well, so and so said that I could do it this way because that's the way they were doing it. Well, they're doing it wrong because that's not what the manual says. When we
Yeah.
distance ourselves from the manual, then what happens is the recipe begins to get diluted. And now we don't even have chocolate chips in the chocolate chip cookie. Well, you don't have chocolate chip cookies then. I mean, like, so you got to follow the recipe.
Well, and that's part of the that's a management issue, right? That's the boss. The boss isn't reinforcing the training. The boss
Mhm.
isn't quality controlling the product or the product process. So at certain points, you need to spot check what's going on in your organization, especially when you're talking about putting out a food that's consistent every time and taste that. McDonald's quote is
Yeah.
the pro at this, right? It's not a difficult cooking scenario, but the fact of the matter is it's done exactly the same way every time.
Hmm.
The burger is exactly the same depth on every burger. So it has an exact time cooking time because the meat that they get has the exact amount of fat versus the amount of meat in the patty, so that they have that the processes to butcher the meat and grind it are as important as the processes to cook it, because if the meat isn't consistent, then the time that they have it on the grill is going to either get the same result or not get the same result based on the density of the meat and
Yeah.
the percentage of fat versus beef in the patty. I mean, if you want perfect consistency, you have to look at your processes all the way through from birth to grave, right?
Hmm.
From birth to the time I take a bite at the store, then the processes all have to be the same. How do we train on those processes? Well, we build them, we make sure they're efficient, we document them, we train on them, and we reinforce that training on a schedule.
Mm.
That's the key, reinforcing the training on a schedule. We
Mm.
have to realize that people sway.
Yep.
They're only thinking about what's in front of them. The mind can only manage so much. And if you're not reinforcing these principles all the way through, reinforcing the training on new pieces in the process, how they tie into the old pieces in the process, all of that, and keep reinforcing that training all the way through, then you are providing opportunity for gaps in your process.
Yeah. And it takes a um, certain type of leader to be able to reinforce that training. Back to my days in the restaurant with the mashed potatoes, it was so important that our our owner would come in and he'd find a clean spoon, he'd dip it in the mashed potatoes, put it in his mouth almost every time. Now it would always be a different spoon. He wouldn't contaminate the whole thing, but because that's what he was doing at the time. Until you mentioned the word reinforce, I never thought what he was doing. He was checking the consistency because that's what they were known for. We went through more mashed potatoes than anything else. I mean, that was like, it was kind of like, think about fries at a restaurant, at a quick service restaurant. That's probably between that and a Coca-Cola. That's probably the number one thing that they go through the most. So there's got to be consistency. Chick-fil-A has, you can only have 3 crumbs in one container of fries. That's it. I mean, because it's a matter of the consistency. You can't have
Mhm.
broken pieces in the bottom there because that's broken. And so reinforcing that, sometimes we just got busy and you're
Yeah.
putting out things that are just not part of the process. They're not part of I mean, like going back to your training. Who do you think on that reinforcement, who is, I mean, obviously I would think the leadership, who who was responsible in your time in the Navy for reinforcing that training or the
Well,
outcomes?
so there's a couple of things there. Who's responsible? Everybody. Um, it's one of the things I used to say all the time is that you're responsible for your own education.
Mm.
And that means going back and looking at the manual, reading it once in a while. It's kind of interesting. I had to. My wife was going to head down to Nebraska because my daughter goes down to Nebraska, and she told me, "Hey, I want to take the Jeep as opposed to the Tesla." I was like, I got a little sad for a second because I don't like the Jeep. Um, and I'm like, okay. First thing I did was I was like, oh, I got to rotate the tires on the Jeep. I got to make sure they're balanced. I want to make sure my wife has a nice, safe trip. So yesterday morning, I like hopped out of bed. I'm like, I got to get down to the tire shop and um, and get the stuff done. Even though I wasn't planning on doing it, let's get it done. So I went down there and I showed up on their doorstep at 7:30 in the morning because I know that if I go to this particular tire shop and I am sitting there at 7:30, that I'm going to get in and out by 8:30. They open
Wow.
their doors at 8 and they
Mhm.
always slip me in and they get my stuff done. And the other thing I like about them is that they don't charge for the rotation and balance, which is nice. But
Yeah.
point being is that I showed up at that time and they were having their team meeting in the morning, and I got to sit and listen to their team meeting. And there you go. Every morning that team meets. There's a team of
Mm.
7 tire technicians, an assistant manager, and a manager. And 5 minutes of that morning meeting is reinforcing training.
Wow.
It transcends food service. It goes for everything.
Right.
They reinforced their commitment to customer service, which, by the way, is outstanding. They reinforced they reinforced the process of rotating tires. Yeah, that was the topic yesterday morning. They reinforced how fast they need to be able to do it, how which of the balancing mechanisms are working, which ones are under maintenance, how they're going to attack the day, how many scheduled appointments that they have for that day, and how many openings that they're going to try to fill with walk-ins that day. I mean, every morning these guys meet for 30 minutes. They show up at 7:30. They open their doors at 8 o'clock. They close their doors at 5. But they're there a half an hour before the customers let in the door,
Hmm.
and they reinforce all of the training every day. I'm sure
Hmm.
that they have a training once a month and they reinforce that every day throughout the month. And
Yeah.
they are absolutely doing it the right way. This is I like this tire shop. It's one of the best I've ever been to. They treat the customers extremely well. By the way, they treat their employees extremely well
Hmm.
and they reinforce training daily.
Yeah. That's and that has to become the standard. Where we
That
know
is the standard.
this is not like we're having a meeting. Hey, are we having a meeting tomorrow? We always do. I mean, like instead of people wondering whether you're going to do this extra thing. No, the extra thing becomes the thing. I mean, it becomes part of this is who we are.
So I think, and I'm pretty staunch on this. If you're not doing this daily, if you're not having a daily stand up, your company's at a deficit.
Mm,
Okay. So all the problems that happened yesterday, and you're having a once a week meeting, no one's going to remember what happened
yeah.
yesterday. Okay. And those problems just kind of slip away till they happen again. And they get worse. It's kind of like a snowball going down a hill. If it's not dealt with, then it just keeps rolling and gaining snow, and
Hmm.
the problem becomes bigger. If you're not doing a daily stand up with your team to, and this is the core of the stand up, to figure out what went right yesterday,
Yeah.
to post mortem what went wrong yesterday,
Hmm.
to figure out how you're going to make it not go wrong again,
Yeah.
to reinforce training, and to reinforce the commitment to the values and mission of the organization on a
Hmm.
daily basis, to reaffirm what the company does and who they do it for.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that on a daily basis, your company is at a deficit.
Yeah. And no one knows, why are we here? What
Right.
are we doing? What's the purpose? What's the meaning? And why do I need to show up on time? Well, I got to show up on time if I'm clear on what the purpose is. And part of the training, to your point, part of that training should be reinforcing the mission. This is what we do. This is where we're going. This is how we do it. These are our values. Chick-fil-A, every time, my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. It's grained in you.
There's a magic little piece of gold in there that I want to pull out for you. Okay, you have employees that don't show up on time. Start doing a daily stand-up, because when they don't show up on time, everybody notices,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody wants to be in that position.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming in, the one coming in late to the meeting.
The one, yeah, it only happens once or twice, and after they get that look from them, you almost don't even have to say it. It's
Yeah.
not, but I think you should say it. You should say that's not acceptable. And if we do that again, we're going to have to talk about some consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's the rat running when all the other rats are watching me. Runs faster.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that thing. And you can eliminate a lot of problems, especially in short order restaurants or convenience stores or any of these service-oriented companies.
Yeah.
Having a daily stand-up will instantly drop down your no-show rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or your late show rate.
Yep.
Your late show rate. Yeah.
I've seen it at Lowe's. I've seen it at Home Depot. I've seen it at Sam's Club. We don't have a Costco near us, so I haven't seen it there. But I would imagine that they do it. That may be an assumption on my part. What about on the documentation side? So I'd love to explore that documentation side, because the company that I was working with earlier today, they know it.
Yeah.
And like you said, the shadowing of the training and stuff like that, but it's not documented. It's proven up here. I know what to do. And like the owner could train, 4 people all at one time to do it. It's just not documented. There seems to be a breakdown in just getting it documented.
I think we just give them the hack. There's a hack here. Okay.
Let's do
it. You need to document your processes. It's that simple. You have to do it so you can provide training on it. And in today's world, small business can be as well documented as, like the biggest Fortune 500 corporations.
Yep.
You can do it in a day, where it used to be this pain in the butt thing. So I'm going to give you the hack to do this, because this is really, really, really easy. So you take your phone, right? And you turn on record. And as you're doing stuff, you talk about what you're doing. And you take that recording and you go online and you transcribe that recording. Then you go to ChatGPT or your favorite AI, whatever it may be.
Right.
And the prompt is this easy. Mm-hmm. Please turn this text into a documented process. Paste.
Yep.
A documented process for X. Paste. Yep. And hit enter. Now, if you want to do some really fun stuff, validate the output. Make sure every piece of your process is in order in that output, and you break everything down into process. And then you go to another program that will put an AI trainer on, and you upload that process and say, create me a training video.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's
boom.
The hack. Yeah.
There's the hack. You can document any particular process in about an hour doing that, as long as you have the data, or you can get it out of your head and into the phone, and then you can run it through AI. And by the end of the day, so in about a week, maybe 2 weeks max, without hardly any effort, you could probably fully document any small business.
Yeah. And so as the message to, if you are a startup.
One last thing. Once you get all that documentation put together, now you can use Chat GPT to create a training program around your documentation. So in about a month, you could look like your McDonald's. You've got training documentation, you've got processes that are documented. And now when you hire somebody and you onboard them, you're increasing your chances of keeping them on your team by 60%.
Yeah. And I'd love to go deeper on that, like increasing the chance of keeping them on their team. So true. That's a great tool, because what I've seen is most people, when you got to shadow them, I mean, people learn differently. They learn, bad habits or whatever because they're shadowing or whatever, and they're not seeing it. Okay, you're seeing somebody do it, but you don't know how they got to that outcome because it happened so fast because they've been doing it so fast. And then keeping it, I think about how long would you stay at a place that every time you come in and clock in, you have no idea what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You're not going to stay there because that uncomfortable, most people don't stay in an environment where they're uncomfortable every time they show up.
Well, and
what they're supposed to do.
And so there's a couple of outcomes from documentation like this. Number one, you start understanding how your business operates, and you can start identifying things that are important to you in the business and turning them into what we call KPIs, or key performance indicators.
Right.
Right. I cringe when I hear someone doing, a performance review, and I feel like you're not doing this, or I feel like you're not doing that. If you're not as good as Johnny, or any of that stuff, and there's like, okay, can you quantify that for me?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, we need to have numbers that we have benchmarked to measure performance by, and that those numbers come from the documented processes and the training that's been doing, so that we have some key numbers to measure performance by. So that way, when I'm doing your performance review, I'm my first part of my performance review is, do you exude our mission, our vision? Are you committed to our mission? Do you operate and carry yourself within our value structure? There's the first part. And if it's a yes to those three, now here's your numbers. Here's what your target numbers are in your KPIs, and here's what your numbers are. You are outperforming in these three areas. We have a little bit of a deficit in this area. What can we do to help you move that number up to where it needs to be?
I love
those are far better conversations,
right?
Because number one, it doesn't attack anyone personally, and it makes you and the employee on the same side of the table against the numbers.
Yeah.
And it's a different.
I think that's a great thought, especially since one of our viewers had mentioned when we're talking about these things, the boss cursing at their employee because the boss has not trained them effectively.
Yeah.
And now somehow it's I'm the idiot, but wait, I just started. I'd love to know what I'm supposed to be doing to get that value. You're grading me on these KPIs that you never taught me about, you never instructed me about, and you're and then it's like I think Susan's an idiot. I just don't think she's ever going to get it. Like, how would she get it? You don't have a documented process. It's unfair to Susan. And now you're cursing her name, thinking that she's not very valuable, simply because you haven't done the work I has ever thought of, interviewed, hired on, onboarded to put her in a great position. And you said something I thought was very good about the supportive aspect. The conversation shifted from all that you're doing wrong to, how may I support you further in this area? Because this is the area that we need. This is the one opportunity for growth I can see. You're getting these right. great job on these KPIs because you know the standard, you know what you're supposed to do. How can I support you elevate over here? Because that's what really a boss, a servant leader especially, is supposed to be helping their team grow to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. And by the way, I appreciate that comment. That's a great one because I feel that. I know I've seen that, and it's poor leadership, obviously, but also the weak training or the lack thereof altogether. So what? So in the on the power of manuals is the other component of our talk today. So effective training, documenting it, putting it in a manual. Is it a paper trail? Is it online? Is it I mean, like a lot of companies I've seen have, maybe 3 tablets that leaders use around, or maybe they have an employee computer that they can go to for the manual. What's the best way or is there a best way to take
Well,
created in AI? I mean, is it on a
well,
training platform?
so it's the training manual. It depends on the function, right? And the application of that information, right? If you're a mechanic and you've got a manual on, a particular car, when you're working on that car, you want that manual to be right in front of you or within sight so that you can, go step by step. Sometimes videos are great, right? I mean, I can repair anything in my house just by going on YouTube
Yeah,
and
sure.
turning on the video and walking step by step through it. I'm watching the video as I'm doing it. I pause it, get the little piece done, and turn it back on, and walks me right
Mhm.
through to, if I want to repair something. Um, Access is the key, and access when you're involved in the situation or in the process that's been
Right.
documented, right? It needs to be there. So, if you're an HR person, you're going to have that HR manual planted, and someone calls in about their benefits, you're going to go to the benefits section of your manual. You're going to have that open when you're talking to them so that you can reference it very quickly,
Mhm.
in case you have a thing. Now, if you've been training on this manual, you might know it by rote, but best thing to do is have that script right in front of you so that you can see it
Yep.
when you need
Yeah,
it.
the easy access, and I
Easy
mean,
access.
everybody knows where it is. It's easy to get to it because if it's not easy, you confuse them, you lose them. I mean, like if it's not easy to do, if you want somebody to buy from you, but you don't make it easy to pay, they ain't buying from you. And so the same thing would be like if you don't make it easy to find that answer, they're going to either just get stuck and do nothing, or they're going to make it up as they go.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the part. You don't want to make it up as they go, right? That's that's a management issue. That goes back right to where we started,
Right.
right? That is like, if you're not training, you're not reinforcing training, and you don't have availability to a manual or a guide that's right there at their job post, wherever that job post may be, then you're asking for that diversion from the process.
Hmm.
You're
Yeah.
asking for it.
Yep.
So, so I think we covered everything that we started out saying we were going to cover today. We
Yep.
covered, why.
Hmm.
Why do you need a manual? Why do you need to document your processes? And it's good onboarding. It's consistent training. It's building key performance indicators into your organization. It provides for a better, what I call the dance of business.
Hmm.
Everybody's dancing very nicely together and
Hmm.
all rowing the boat in the same direction. And it gives you clean and clear criterion to start working with your employees on upping their performance or continuing and maintaining their high performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I think it honors your team.
absolutely.
Imagine if it's all up here and I'm sick or I'm out or I'm on vacation and now my team is stuck and they don't know what they're going to do. They're going to shut down. They're going to feel disempowered. It doesn't honor them. And they're going to guess what they're going to do while I'm on the beach. Ring, ring. Like now I'm solving problems and putting out fires. And then ultimately my customers are suffering because my team has not been well trained. They don't know what to do when they get into when they face this situation. So my biggest takeaway was when you talked about making it easily accessible for everyone. Everybody can get this answer.
Based on their role. You break
Yep.
that manual up into the processes, and that who's involved in that process has the manual for that process.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent. Love it. Love it. Thank you, Paul. That's great. I love this stuff. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Thank you for making the comments. Thank you for putting those in the comments, because that's why that's how we can serve you even better when you roll out with us. So thank you for joining us today.
Take care, and we'll see you not next Thursday because you're on the road.
I will be on the road. Yes.
So we will be rerunning next Thursday, but the Thursday after we'll be back live with Pivot Point Live.
Excellent. Take care, everybody.